Good morning, class. Today we're going to be learning lesson 2-2 in our textbooks, and it's all about learning how to analyze conditional statements. So we haven't talked about what a conditional statement is yet, and what I want you to think of is a statement that has some sort of condition to it. All right, we're going to write this down, that it's a logical statement with two parts. Those two parts are a hypothesis and a conclusion. So let me show you how you're going to be seeing them in this lesson. It's going to be in the form of an if-then statement. For example, if it is raining, then there are clouds outside. So I have two parts from my statement. We're going to underline the hypothesis. It's this part right here in the front. It is raining. This is our hypothesis. And the second half, there are clouds outside, is the conclusion. And we made a condition. If it is raining, then there are clouds outside. So let's do a little practice with some other basic statements and turn them into an if-then statement. The first one is, all birds have feathers. I want us to rewrite this as a conditional statement. So we're going to split it into two parts, and we're going to say if this hypothesis, then the conclusion. So I'm going to split it this way. If an animal is a bird, that's my hypothesis, then it has feathers. So I have two different parts here. My hypothesis, an animal is a bird, that's what has to happen in the beginning. And if I find that that's true, I'm going to assume that it has feathers. This is giving it a condition. Let's try one more. Rewrite the statement, two angles are supplementary if they are a linear pair. So in my example, I already have the word if in it. And this is already showing that there is some sort of condition. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to start with if two angles are a linear pair, then they are supplementary. So this is just getting us familiar with if-then statements and a beginning conditional statement. Okay. Now there's something that's called the negation of a statement. Let me show that to you right there. There we go. And the negation of a statement is the opposite of the original statement. So the opposite of the original statement. Okay, so for instance, if my original statement is the ball is red, then the opposite of the statement, the negation, is the ball is not red. Okay, I could have another example where the original statement says the angle is 30 degrees, and the negation of this would be the angle is not 30 degrees. Okay, so we're getting into some logic here. So if you were asked to show that a conditional statement was true, you have to prove that it's true for every hypothesis, every time that you have that hypothesis. So let's write this down. To show a conditional statement is true, you must prove it is true every time the hypothesis is true. You're going to find in today's lesson it's a lot more writing. Okay, so for instance, if I'm claiming that there's a ball and it's red, I have to prove that that's true every single time. But if I want to show that a conditional statement is false, I only have to give one counterexample. Let's write that down. For instance, if I claim that all balls were red and I found one ball, like a tennis ball, that's green, I found one counterexample to prove that that statement was false. So let's move on. You're going to learn 3 other ways to rewrite a conditional statement. The first way is called the converse. And what the converse is it's switching the hypothesis and the conclusion in reverse order. Okay, so let's write that down. So you're taking your original conditional statement and you're going to switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. Of the conditional statement. Okay. The second way that we're going to talk about is the inverse. And the inverse is taking the original conditional statement and negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. So the inverse is negating both the hypothesis and conclusion of the conditional statement. And we'll do an example in just a moment. Okay. The third way that we're going to talk about is the contrapositive. Contrapositive, it's a longer word. Okay. And the contrapositive is first writing the converse of the original statement, so flipping the hypothesis and the conclusion, and then negating it. So the converse is, or the contrapositive is negating the converse. And that's all that we're going to write. Okay, so we've been writing a lot of definitions so far in this lesson, but it's going to help you out. So why don't we get to an example? Okay, we're going to write a conditional statement, and then we're going to transform it in 3 different ways, into the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. So let's start with the conditional statement. The one that we're going to write today is, if the measure of angle A is equal to 99 degrees, then angle A is obtuse. Okay, so this is my starting conditional statement. So the converse is taking what I already have and just flipping it in reverse order. So I'm putting the conclusion first, and then I'm going to put the hypothesis last. And it's still going to look like an if-then statement. So instead I'm going to say, if angle A is obtuse, then the measure of angle A is equal to 99 degrees. So that's our converse statement. The inverse is going back to the original conditional statement and just simply negating it. So negating means the opposite of what it says. So I'm going to write if the measure of angle A does not equal 99 degrees, then angle A is not obtuse. So I kept it going in the same order, but I changed it so that it was the negation of both of those statements. So now the last one is the contrapositive. What that is it's just negating the converse. And since I already have the converse written, I'm just simply going to write the opposite of what it says. So if angle A is not obtuse, then the measure of angle A is not equal to 99 degrees. And I'm just kind of underlining those knots right there. What I want you to notice here is which one of these statements are true and which are false. So let's read the first one. If the measure of angle A equals 99 degrees, then angle A is obtuse. That's true. Let's read the next one. If angle A is obtuse, then the measure of angle A equals 99 degrees. Well, I can think of many more angles that are obtuse that are not equal to 99 degrees. For instance, if an angle was 120 degrees, that's also obtuse. So this statement would be false. Let's read the inverse. If the measure of angle A does not equal 99 degrees, then angle A is not obtuse. Well, that's not true either. That's a false statement. Well, let's read the contrapositive. If angle A is not obtuse, then the measure of angle A is not equal to 99 degrees. Well, that's true. If it's not obtuse, then it can't be 99 degrees. So that's a true statement. So let's just take a look here. The conditional statement, if that's true, also the contrapositive is true. And likewise, if the converse is false, the inverse is also false. You might have some scenarios where the conditional statement and the contrapositive are both false, and the converse and the inverse are both true. So you're just going to notice a pairing between the conditional statement and the contrapositive, and the converse and the inverse in every case. And so what those are called is those are called equivalent statements. So we're going to write a definition for this right now. Let me make sure that you can see that. So equivalent statements are two statements that are either both true or both false. So the pairings that you're going to notice will be the conditional statement with the contrapositive, and on the other hand, the converse with the inverse. You'll always see that those are going to be equivalent statements with one another. They're either going to both be true or they're going to both be false. Okay? So when a conditional statement and its converse are both true, you can write this new word. It's called a biconditional statement. Okay, lots of definitions today. So think of this. If the first original statement is true and its converse, so just writing it in the backwards order, is also true, you can write what's called a biconditional statement. And we write this by combining both of the statements together with the words if and only if. So let's write that down. By combining both statements with the words if and only if. Those are the key words right there. And I wrote the word combing. I'm sorry. That's the combining. So let me give you one last example, and then we're going to be done for today. So we're going to write this conditional statement. A right angle is 90 degrees. Now it kind of just looks like the definition of a right angle, okay? It's not in the if-then form, but I could always rewrite it in an if-then form like I did in the beginning. So the converse, I need to think of what this means in if-then form and then write it in the opposite order, having the conclusion first. So I would say if an angle is 90 degrees, then it is a right angle. Now my first statement is true, and the converse is also true. So because they're both true, I can write a biconditional statement. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to combine both of these ideas with the words if and only if. So let's see, let me get my purple marker. Let's write this down. An angle is a right angle if and only if the measure of the angle is 90 degrees. And I'm done. And I use those words if and only if to connect those two thoughts. And this is all that we're going to learn today. We're going to do a lot of practice of this in class. So for the end, I have one problem for you to do on your own. I want you to write the if-then form of the following conditional statement. The statement is soccer players are athletes. And then I also want you to write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive of this statement. Once you're done with that, simply identify which are true, and then we'll talk about that in class. So, see you guys when you come to class tomorrow morning.